the balance sheet of Sri Lankan Airlines more attractive to investors.
How many blessed state-owned enterprises actually make a return?
500 million US dollars of debt at People's Bank belonging to Sri Lankan Airlines just over 2 years ago. States supported Hyundai. The state supported Kia. For Sri Lanka to make the leap into export-oriented industrial manufacturing, we need tradable sectors to have foreign investments.
So should Sri Lanka stop exporting products and rather should be concentrating on exporting brands? Should they be building brands that can go overseas?
That's the dream. But if there are many
But
steps
some of these
before we
companies
get
have made those dreams come true.
Yes, and
Dilmah comes to mind.
Exactly, and there can be so many more stories like that. If you look at companies like Samsung, TSMC, the European companies, most of these companies have developed themselves into global giants today, but they started out with significant state support. Right. The state supported Hyundai. The state supported Kia.
That's an interesting point to say about the state support. When we analyzed the financial report of the Bank of Ceylon and the People's Bank, we found that they had the People's Bank, Bank of Ceylon had 5.3 trillion rupees at play. But, something like 60% of that was in what I call a captive audience, as in government bonds, bills, and, wait for it, investment in state-owned enterprises. How many blessed state-owned enterprises actually make a return? Value for money. So if the mandate of the bank is to show financial profit, then they've done okay. But that is not the mandate of the Bank of Ceylon or the People's Bank. What is their role in stirring up the economy? They should be lending to people, to subjects where perhaps a private bank wouldn't, because maybe they have stricter, considerations and so on. But so this state banks, they've lost, to me, in my very public view, is they've lost the plot, and instead, what these two state banks have done is they're obviously not going to get any advertising from them. So, sales, forget about that bit. The point is this: they've lost the plot, and instead of doing that, what they've done is they've become mini treasuries for the government of the day. That's what's happened. It's not enough that the treasury is virtually bankrupted by all sorts of jolly things these administrators have done over the years, but so have these banks. If we do a proper, fit and proper analysis of the People's Bank, there will be many questions asked. I'm not saying that it's all wrong and it's crooked, but let's do an audit to stand up to international standards.
Actually, since you mentioned People's Bank, I think it's important for your viewers to remind your viewers that the Sri Lankan taxpayer, that's you and I and your viewers, we wrote off something like 500 million US dollars of debt at People's Bank belonging to Sri Lankan Airlines just over 2 years ago under the Ranil Wickremesinghe government. So the point of doing that, the you and I and our children and our children's children taking on this debt was so that the government could make the balance sheet of Sri Lankan Airlines more attractive to investors.
I wonder if our common friend, Mr. Jai Wickrem's children, have been told that they will face debt for the next 35 years.
I'm sure they and all of our children will have to be told at some point that there is this.
Because you've got one now.
Yes, as well. So I think the problem is that things like Sri Lankan Airlines, there is no plan for it. And the other SOEs you mentioned, yes, there are. These SOEs need to be closed. There's no question about that. But the other problem I always try to bring to people's attention is that 50% of the losses from SOEs come from Sri Lankan Airlines, CPC, CEB, Water Board. Now, other than Sri Lankan Airlines, the other three, there is no successful model available for liberalization and privatization. The CEB has the unbundling, which we should be implementing, which is also at a standstill for some reason. That is probably the best model we have. And even then, that is not a privatization or a liberalization. Some part of this will need to be borne by the taxpayer. So again, these privatization and liberalization of utilities, public utilities and monopolies is very complicated, and it's not something that we should be hanging our economic success on. So by all means, reform and restructure the SOEs, but we cannot expect the utilities to become a return or capital return oriented. That cannot be the point of an SOE, because most of the countries that develop, there is a part of that economy where the SOE takes on some burden, which is subsidizing the public in some way. Now, this is the same thing that happened with Singapore and Temasek. Now, obviously, our model is completely, rudimentary compared to Temasek. But we can move into something like that. But certainly, all these unnecessary SOEs, they need to go, and they should have been gone already.
If a foreign investor comes into Sri Lanka and wants to invest $10 million, where on earth is he going to invest that?
Yes.
Where? Because it's not, like you say, we need something like Temasek so that they bundle a lot of things together.
On foreign investment, first, can I make a small distinction here?
Yeah.
Right. So there's different types of foreign investment, right?
Yeah.
There is foreign investment into Sri Lanka into real estate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of foreign investment. Mixed development projects, lifestyle investments, that is there, right? Whether that is truly productive is up for debate.
And the Supreme Court's playing their own part in this quest for FDI, because a recent March 2026 judgment of the Supreme Court in terms of a property matter, there's a direction from the Supreme Court that the Condominium Management Authority enter into legally enforceable contracts so that the purchaser, the deposits, any monies paid, is held under escrow arrangements. Now, that's very, very critical, because two gentlemen went for 22 years, they fought a battle, represented themselves all throughout, including the Supreme Court, and that was the order. So in terms of foreign investment into real estate will be helped in a way by our Supreme Court. Talking back about the law being
right. And the other part of investment that I just want to stress is that there is most of the successful investment, even in other countries, even in the East Asian giants, is not investment that is there to serve the local population. It is investment to take advantage of some kind of manufacturing expertise, some kind of tax loophole, some kind of comparative advantage in infrastructure, logistics, that kind of thing. So that's where Sri Lanka is not getting that kind of investment, because we are not part of the ASEAN trade bloc, one of the most important trade blocs in the world. We are not going to join the RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership with China and a lot of the other East Asian economies. So if we don't have those FTAs in place, if we are not part of those trading blocs, and we don't have industrial capacity, and we are behind in terms of energy subsidy policies, in terms of industrial policy, it's going to be difficult for us to attract that kind of investment. So we will keep getting tourism-related, residential, mixed development investment. But for Sri Lanka to make the leap into export-oriented industrial manufacturing, we need tradable sectors to have foreign investments. The whole problem with the Mahinda Rajapaksa post-war era was this construction boom, which made everyone feel like the country's growing, GDP is growing. So yes, the GDP was great. There was GDP growth, but you did not see that filter down to the common man, and that's why Ms. Rajapaksa got voted out.
We are coming towards the end of this program, Mr. Wijetilleke. So here's a hypothetical question for you, but it might happen because of your profile. If you had one uninterrupted hour with a person by the name of Anurukumara Dissanayake, President, Republic of Sri Lanka, what would you urge him to do first?
Well, I would urge him to do a few things in a certain sequence. First of all, he would have to read up on the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the United States and the New Deal that he began. I think that kind of economic program is one of the only ways that Sri Lanka can achieve the next thing that he should do, which is export-oriented industrialization. And for all this to happen, you have to have some kind of renegotiation with the IMF, where we actually get debt stock reduction, because what we have right now is essentially a bit of cash flow ease and a moratorium. We don't actually have a much lower debt stock than we did at the time of the crisis, and by the end of the program we will have a higher external debt stock. So these are things that he has to look at more seriously, because the NPP and AKD himself had the correct rhetoric when it came to the IMF during the campaign. Their actions in government have left a huge gap between the campaign rhetoric and the actions in government. So unfortunately, while the IMF has us in this straitjacket, and until we understand that our external debt is still not sustainable, it may be sustainable on paper for a few years between now and 2030. But when we have this, it's kind of like a stepped debt cliff. It's not a cliff, but it's a stepped cliff.
Yeah.
So as those debt payments go up, we are once again going to have another cost of living adjustment. And at that point, for us, it's very important. Just I'll finish with this. What you're seeing with Trump, what you're seeing with what we saw with Gotabaya, what we saw with Liz Truss, these are results of the political center failing to improve people's material conditions. That's why people with very interesting ideas come in, whether it's tariffs, whether it's tax cuts, whether it's organic fertilizer. These very different ideas come into play when the political center fails the voter over and over again. So if this NPP government, the so-called left progressive NPP government, does not deliver on people's material conditions, all the arrests and all the corruption cases in the world will not prevent somebody else coming up with another fancy idea, which will once again lead to a collapse of our economy. So this is the problem that we face, that people will get frustrated and they will search for answers elsewhere. And I'm from a liberal party. Liberal parties are struggling because we are not extreme enough, and people are looking for extreme responses to their situation, which they see as extreme. They are in an extreme situation right now, and the noises and the policies coming out of government are not urgent enough to meet those needs.
Kusum, Wijetilleke, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's the way it was on Corporate Sri Lanka. Thank you for watching. Do subscribe on the YouTube channel. And as always, God bless you all.